Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 830. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, we feature our conversation with Jeremy Berriault. What? Jeremy is a columnist. No, not this time. Jeremy has a new book, Beyond the Framework, Cultivating Agile Growth. The back cover states, organizations that fail to embrace agility, and I'll make that a small a, risk fading into obscurity. We discuss the basic assumption of Agile and why business agility differs from adopting any specific Agile framework. Are you ready to challenge a framework-centric view of the world? It's time for the conversation. Jeremy Berriault, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
It is always a pleasure to be here with you, Tom.
Hey, Jeremy, today we're going to do something a little different. This is not your column. This is...
Nope.
This is us talking about your new book, Beyond the Framework, Cultivating Agile Growth by Jeremy Berriault. Jeremy, let's start for those people who only listen to the first 5 minutes and then drop away. What's the punchline?
The punchline here is building out the environment, building out the ecosystem for agility to grow and to flourish.
What does that mean? What is the ecosystem? Are you hugging trees and stuff like that?
No, I'm not hugging trees. And it's more setting up the environment instead of just kind of like focusing on, say, like a framework or here and there with some of the behaviors within an agile environment. It's more here building out the foundation to kind of have it succeed so that you can evolve so they can grow. About a month ago, I wrote a blog, said basically the title saying that you don't build a polar bear enclosure for a jaguar at a zoo. So it's really kind of basing it off that is you're building it out so that the environment, the teams, everyone around can succeed and be more that adaptable, self-managed, efficient organization.
So what are some of the components of the ecosystem that you talk about building out and managing in Beyond the Framework, Cultivating Agile Growth?
So the foundations, so this book actually started out as I tried to create an e-course during the COVID times, and really it kind of built out on starting off with, okay, so you start off with your leadership, making sure that the leadership is set up in a fashion where they are like the servant leaders. They understand how they have to change and adapt. And then setting off, getting your starting point, having your metrics, having that all sorted out and identifying how you're going to design the teams and design kind of, again, going back to that blog about the enclosure. You're designing the organization to succeed so that everything can survive. And that's the first part. The first part really starts off, I call it the start, call it the foundation. The second part I talk about the system. So the system is really how kind of setting up the teams and how they're going to function and work together. And the last part is really kind of having everything evolve, how you grow that ecosystem. And calling it the ecosystem, it was something that I thought about over the past couple of years when I was writing this, in that when we did our talk back in Agile 23, when I talked about evolution in Agile and how to make things grow, the more and more I thought about it is like to have it grow and have it evolve, you have to create an ecosystem, no different than creating an ecosystem being. And as we want this to grow, we want it to be set up so that it can grow. So there's nothing impeding it to improve.
What would be some of the impediments that you generally see that this book would help address?
So the way I structured the book is after each chapter, I have, there's like I call it the workbook. And really, it's a series of questions to try to help identify the kind of like the deep-rooted kind of issues that will create that impediment, like the command and control type behaviors that no one really kind of realizes or sees. They just kind of they're complacent to it, or they just kind of, it's a norm of every day. And it kind of opens the eyes to everyone, like to the reader, to say, oh, okay, yeah, we do have this. We do. Okay, now how can we address it? And the book kind of gives you the ideas of how to address it and to build out and go further.
Why don't you give me an example?
So I got my book right here. So I'll go through an example. Let's see here. Let's start with, well, we'll go with the start. Let me find here, chapter 1, where it says start here. Some of the questions that I ask is kind of, first off, is like, do they understand what the company mission statement is and the vision statement? Are things documented? Are team values documented? Are like, how do you plan out your open space? How do you have those open space meetings? Another question I have here is, after I go through some of the questions.
Okay, so let me stop you and pick on a couple of things.
Yep.
Mission statement and vision statement of the company. I would suggest to you that in most organizations, people understand it. It's a pile of poo-poo. It's not worthwhile. It doesn't motivate, and make sure that the people doing the work stay within their boundaries. Fighting words.
Yeah. No, and it's true. Like, and I understand. Like, and you see that in some of the vision and mission statements organizations have. It's like, hey, we want to build out this. We want to be the best company at doing this. But when you go through, so in the first chapter, one of the components I talk about is creating the team agile value. And it's not just a matter of copying and pasting the values off the web page, off with the agile, with the manifesto. It's more designing the team's values so that they align in with the vision and mission statement. So you have that alignment going across, so the team understands how they work and go through. And what that does is help them create a ability to make decisions based on their values so that they can achieve those goals.
Okay, I'm going to read you a mission and vision statement. This company is advancing our vision of the world with zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion through the creation of electric, self-driving, connected vehicles, and shared mobility services that will transform how we get around. How does that help a team be agile?
That's a very long mission statement, but what it does, at least it gives them a goal as to what their ideas of how they should work together and what their values are to try to achieve that. And it doesn't, like, agile values doesn't have to be like a very long, drawn out type of statement or a document. It's maybe just like 4 or 5 bullet points saying, okay, this is what we value so we can achieve this. We value that we're going to be we understand everyone is different. We want to collaborate. We want to, how are we going to work together? What are our values? So it gets into that point. And really, it just kind of almost becomes like their little North Star. Like the vision and mission statement are like the company's North Star. The agile values that I talk about in the book is helping the team with their own North Star, guiding them towards, so that whatever the work they do, they guide it towards to achieve that mission and vision.
Okay. Teams set their mission and vision based on the company one. It's sort of cascading down. Where have you seen that have problems? What is, if your team had it wrong, how would you see that translating into a problem that you could recognize and take an action on?
So as a team that we create, let's just say a team does create their values based off that, but they got it wrong. They misunderstood, or they jumbled it up. However, and it could happen, where things will start to be noticed, where things kind of are wrong, is just maybe the level of frustration within the team, because maybe they're trying to get work done and they're just hitting wall after wall, obstacle after obstacle, trying to get to the work done so that they can achieve it. And it should be noticeable really quick that, hey, okay, I think maybe we got something wrong here. Let's kind of reboot this. Let's revisit this and see where we're kind of making where we made the mistake. And I wouldn't even say a mistake. I would just say just a misunderstanding. And a team I worked with had something like that similar to happen. We worked with them. We created the agile values for the team. And as we were going through within like a couple sprints, things didn't seem right. Right. They didn't have the motivation, like the full motivation of like a whole rah, okay, let's go and go get it done. There was still some frustration. So we just revisited and we found out we just changed some of the wording, and the teams got together and we changed some of the wording and it worked. And now they became more fluid and functional and getting their work done. And they understood what their goal should be, what their end goal is going to be, and trying to attempt after every sprint and go forward and forward and forward.
In chapter 5, you talk about continuous improvement. And in chapter 8, you talk about evolution. How do you distinguish the difference between those two concepts?
So there's more focus within the teams and how to kind of, depending how large the team is, whether it's a team, a department, and so on. The evolution part is more kind of growing and evolving all the other teams so that they come more and more in sync and continuously deal with the changes or impediments or obstacles going through. So it's the kind of like the 10,000 foot level of looking at evolving, right? So everything kind of grows and changes over time. The continuous improvement is just the small changes that happen over and over again. When I look initially, I talked about when I first started writing the book and kind of sectioned everything out, that evolve section, I wrote it as a maturity section. And as we've talked about before, I kind of changed my view as like from an agility perspective to more evolution. And so I rewrote that chapter with evolution involved in mind, in that it's to continuously kind of change and become that better overall team and organization and grow.
How does any organization, team, person consciously evolve?
Consciously, that's a tough one, because I think it's more unconscious, because you're really trying to improve and become better at what you did yesterday.
Why is that not process
for
improvement?
me? Sorry?
Why is that not process improvement then?
Well, overall, yes, you do have some improvement, but you can also improve yourself within that process. A good example personally would be how, for myself in jiu-jitsu, is that there's always certain ways to adapt and change and improve to win a match. Just last weekend, I had a tournament. I got 2 silvers. My first match didn't go so well in the final. And then we went through into another final for the absolute, which is basically all the weight divisions come in. And the difference when I look at the fights and how I fought differently just within that 20-minute period was different. I didn't change the overall rules. I didn't change the process of how things are done. I just improved myself in adapting and how to do that, complete my fight. For individuals and teams, it's that same type of thing. It's like, okay, you have your guidelines and guidance of how you're going to get stuff done. You're going to improve within those guidelines and guidance to get better, to achieve that goal, to be more efficient and effective.
The process of writing a book is always filled with, trials and tribulations. I could use other words, but this is a business-safe podcast. During the process, I've always found that I learn something new, not only about the topic that I'm doing, and maybe even I learn more about the topic even after I'm done dotting the T's and crossing the I's, and I use that absolutely backwards on purpose. But what did you learn in the process of writing the book about the topic that you were surprised that you didn't know to begin with?
I learned a couple things. One was I can definitely drive people batty with my ideas and writing stuff, because it was more. This shout out to the editor that helped me with this. I think she was willing to jump on a plane and come over here and kick me in the butt, because as I was writing, I'd read through what I wrote, and something happened like that week. It'd be something I wrote, say, like 6 months ago, and I would revisit it because something happened like that particular week. It's like, oh, okay, I got to rewrite this, and it drove her a little bit batty. I think for me personally, what I learned was kind of like the true concept of agility is that I always worked on improving and adding, not just adding, but improving my idea, getting the flow through. I think eventually when it got to the end, I did have to set a goal. I was like, this is the end. This is where we're going, and so we can get it out. And after that, I've already been thinking about, okay, maybe a second edition, maybe a follow-up. I did a quick follow-up book on Kindle just to add more to a particular chapter, to the last chapter with the change management, so that people can understand from DISC and how that can improve communication within a team. So I think it was just more, it's like, okay, I have my goal and how it all worked and how the flow within the actual chapters, because everything I did in those chapters, I've done with teams. I've in some way, shape, or form. And I always adapted what I was doing with those teams to follow at least those kind of guidelines that I wrote. My last engagement was a good example of how I did that and how I got two teams to improve their productivity and how they communicate with each other within 4 months.
Who's this book for?
How I wrote the book was, it's really for anyone that has a business or that works with teams and they want to become more adaptable, more efficient, more effective in what they do. And that's really why I created the title of the book, was Beyond the Framework. So it's not just the frameworks, as we did in our talk. I say a framework is a tool. However you use it, you got to have the right behavior. You got to know how to have the right behaviors to use those tools. And this book here is written for those teams that, okay, I just want to get better at what I do. I want the teams to get better. I want my company to get better. Just recently, I'm working with an accounting firm and helping them improve their flow, improve their efficiency and effectiveness, and how they work with clients, how they work with the government, how they work with during tax time to reduce the times, to reduce stress and make it more effective in how they get through. And again, I'm using everything from this book to build that out with that accounting firm.
So anyone who has a business should be able to pick this up and put the ideas and concepts into practice.
Yes, they should be able to, when they read through the book. And that's why I put in the workbook at the end of every chapter, because I wanted to do this almost like a school book. As my son goes to college right now, I almost wanted to create almost like a school book where, okay, you read the chapter, here are the questions so that they can reinforce everything that I talked about within that chapter. And even in the workbook, I added an additional kind of content to kind of reinforce when they go through those questions. And it helps understand, okay, this is how we are set up. We're kind of set up this fashion. The way the book reads, we can look at it, maybe making some changes here and there. It helps them identify those kind of hidden gaps, right? It helps them identify those hidden kind of wolf in sheep clothing type of behaviors that everyone just, understands going through. And it gives them that, now I see it. This is how we can work together to kind of make things better.
Jeremy, if you were asked to give someone a 3-sentence summary and sales pitch, what would that 3-sentence summary and sales pitch be?
A 3-sentence, that's a very good question. Everything is complex. There's no need to make it complicated. And focus on what's right for your organization or your team.
If you woke up tomorrow morning someone handed you a magic wand, a quadruple shot of espresso, and said that you had 2 wishes for making it possible for organizations to cultivate agile growth, what would those 2 things be and why?
If I had 2 wishes, I think the one wish would be focus more from, I wish everyone would focus overall from a team and not individual goals. And what I mean by that is, and you and I, we've talked about this a couple times, where you have people or executives, they come in, they have their individual goals so that they're compensated based on the work that they do for them to achieve, and then they can kind of move on. And it's more kind of focus on the organization and the growth of the organization, not just individual. It's understanding what their goals are and achieving those goals and having it overall enterprise goals or team goals, not individuals. And when you look at that, everything else, like you're achieving your personal goals, is going to happen. It implicitly happens. But when we have everyone working together to achieve it, then it's a better collaborative team building, team synergy view of getting the work done. And the second wish would be that it wouldn't be, I was about to say to get rid of all the silos, but that would be a wish that maybe I would have said, like, say, 6 months ago. And it was an article I read. There was an article I read just a few weeks ago where it says, you're never going to get rid of the silos. Silos are always, I think it's more opening more doors between the silos and keeping that open communication. And that's what helps everything achieve and get to where you want to get.
Thanks for sharing sharing with the podcast your book, your wisdom on the topic. I can't wait to get you to sign it.
Oh, no.
I got a hard copy. I didn't go for the Kindle version. So, Jeremy, as you know, at this point, I open up the platform for you to promote anything that you'd like. Obviously, we want people to go out and buy Beyond the Framework, Cultivating Agile Growth by Jeremy Berriault, and they can do that on, most, if not all, of the major platforms. What else would you like to promote?
I think, so awesome. What I would like to promote is we're just working through now, creating some additional course and content and workshops. A lot. If you go to my site, berriaultassociates.com, we do sell a lot of assessments through Everything DISC and 5 Behaviors. I think those help out. And just recently, I just finished a sale. I might extend it now to everyone here on the podcast as well, or actually to everyone in the world. Is if buying any one of
just the people on the podcast, because they're
just
really
the people
cool
on the podcast.
People.
I don't know. Well, sure, why not? But currently have a sale now where buying an assessment gets a coaching call with myself to go through the assessment details and also work through some strategies to help out with any of the content. And so we'll be doing that. I also have the Evolutionary Agilist package, which is a series of different assessments and individual coaching calls for those assessments to help you improve as a person, as an individual, and help improve your teams that you work with.
And what is the URL for Berriault and Associates?
It's berriaultassociates.com. So BERRIAULT and associates.com.
That link and a link to your LinkedIn will be in the show notes. Jeremy, thank you very much for sharing today with the Software Process and Measurement Cast listeners.
Tom, it is always a pleasure to have our conversations, and I love being here.
And we read Saturday News. Chapter 5 of How to Be a Stoic by Massimo Pigliucci. Buy a copy, by the way. Link in the show notes is titled Playing Ball with Socrates. The author uses a sports analogy. Basically boils down to, it isn't the ball, it's the person using the ball, the skill, the character, to illustrate why we can be indifferent towards something and that something still be important. The chapter dives into the thorny concepts of preferred and dispreferred indifferences. Link in the show notes to this week and all previous week's installments of our reread of How to Be a Stoic. Master Work Intake. This episode again is brought to you by Mastering Work Intake by Jeremy Willets and Tom Cagley Jr. It's me. Buy a copy. Link in the show notes, and begin to control the flow of work for your team and organization. Simply put, if you don't control work intake, it will control you. Also, in October, we are beginning a 4-part on book club reading of the book. I'll get you the links to that in the very near future. In the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 831, we will feature our essay on how to improve prioritization and work intake when using consensus groupthink techniques. Jeremy Berriault will also return with his column, The Evolutionary Agilist, to round out SPaMCAST 831. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?